The story begins with the Christmas festival, where David is seen celebrating with his wife Julia at his sister's house, and as the night grows late, they start heading home together, talking and sharing moments, when suddenly on the way, a horrific and life-threatening accident occurs, which David somehow survives miraculously. But tragically, Julia dies, leaving David devastated and heartbroken. A year later, David is still unable to recover from Julia's death, living in isolation with only a cat for companionship, until one day when he comes downstairs, he discovers through the news that a strange and deadly virus has spread across the country, turning people into infected zombie-like monsters. Although the government warns everyone to stay safe and take precautions, David is initially unfazed and continues his journey until he reaches the seaside, because last year Julia had bought a boat, which he now intends to sell. After completing the sale, he drives back home, stopping at a store to buy food, and witnesses people violently looting and fighting over supplies, as if the world is ending. And overwhelmed by chaos, he finally calls his sister, who informs him that her husband is in the army and they have been instructed to evacuate all safe people to a secure island, and urges David to join them tonight. He initially refuses, until listening to his sister explain that in times of extreme danger, it is important for family to stay together and support each other, which convinces David to agree. The next morning, he drives to the airport, noticing the streets flooded with vehicles heading the same way, and when he reaches the airport, he finds massive crowds in long lines at the ticket counter, as everyone wants to escape to the safe island, only to hear the devastating announcement that the flight has been canceled, causing panic and chaos among the travelers and forcing David to rush back home. There, he witnesses some neighbors being taken away in a transparent tunnel because they have been infected, and zombies are now spreading in the vicinity, which shocks him deeply. The following morning, his sister calls again, warning that the zombie virus is spreading at an alarming rate through human bites, and shortly afterward, a government message arrives instructing everyone to remain indoors and that all markets are closed to prevent further infections. Realizing the urgent need for food, he rushes to a store, only to find almost all supplies gone, and the few items he manages to gather are snatched away by desperate people, but he still manages to leave with some essentials. While outside, he sees a zombie attacking a police officer and rushes to help, but the zombie shifts its attention toward him, and before it can attack, the officer shoots the zombie and then himself, revealing that he was already infected. David quickly returns home, where he fortifies every part of his house, locking doors and windows meticulously to prevent any zombies from entering, and works tirelessly through the night to secure his home. When darkness falls, soldiers arrive with a bus, instructing any survivors nearby to board so they can be taken to safety. But David hides inside, believing that the more people gathered in one place, the higher the risk of virus transmission, making him determined to survive alone and prepared to defend himself at all costs in the midst of a collapsing society where zombies roam freely. Therefore, David decided that he would survive alone no matter what, staying away from the public. And 2 weeks later, the scene shows that in this vast area, David is the only one left alive, and he shoots a video message to send to his sister, but due to lack of network, the video fails to send, and by now his food supplies are completely exhausted, so he finally decides to go out and search for food, picking up a weapon and checking house by house, searching desperately, but finding nothing, until while inspecting one house, he encounters an old woman who cannot walk because her legs are paralyzed, and although he searches her home for supplies, he finds nothing. But then she tells David about other houses where food might be available, and using this information, David sets out to search, eventually finding a motorcycle, which makes his task much easier since he no longer has to walk long distances. And after searching for a long time, he finally discovers a house full of food, feeling immense relief and happiness. Bringing the supplies back to the old woman, and as night falls, they both eat together joyfully. And after finishing, David returns home and records another video for his sister so that whenever the network returns, she will receive it. and then he falls asleep in his house, only to be awakened shortly afterward by the old woman calling out to him from her radio, telling him to come quickly because the radio has turned on. And when David checks it, he hears military messages instructing anyone alive to come to a camp, promising its location and assuring safety and transfer to another island where they can rebuild their lives. And upon hearing this, David is overjoyed and resolves to reach the camp at any cost, since he would otherwise die of hunger. She tells him she cannot come because she is in a wheelchair, and David reassures him that he will take her to the camp himself, promising to ensure her safety, and they both decide to leave early the next morning. But when morning comes, David finds that the old woman has died, having taken her own life with medication to prevent putting David at risk, leaving him deeply emotional. But without wasting any time, he quickly takes the motorcycle toward the camp, only to find the road blocked shortly afterward, so he decides to take a path through the forest. And as he travels that route, a horde of zombies pursues him, their numbers overwhelming. But somehow, David manages to reach the camp area, only to discover that it is deserted except for zombies, forcing him to attempt a quick escape. But then his motorcycle slips, leaving him extremely vulnerable as the zombies close in right behind him. David quickly tried to start his motorcycle, but it refused to start, and by now the zombies were dangerously close, so he abandoned the bike, taking his cat and moving on foot through the forest, traversing the entire area until he reached the location of his boat, where he quickly boarded it and tried to start it, but the boat failed as well, forcing David to take a raft to continue toward his sister's place. And halfway there, the raft broke, filling him with anger as he realized he was trapped. But shortly afterward, he spotted a passing boat, and waving his hands and shouting for help, he managed to get the boat diverted toward him, where the people on board welcomed him, fed him with food, which he devoured eagerly due to his extreme hunger. And then 3 people arrived, including the pilot, Victor, the ship's owner, and his son, who treated David well and gave him a room to sleep for the night. And while he was resting, he heard cries for help outside, discovering a family stranded on a raft. And the next morning, David asked Victor about the new arrivals from the previous night, but Victor insisted no one had come, claiming David must have imagined it. Yet David trusted his own eyes, searching the ship and eventually finding the family's raft, and he confronted Victor, suggesting they were being held somewhere below the ship, only for Victor to warn him to stay quiet, explaining that speaking against the ship's owners would mean death for both. And realizing the grave danger he was in, and that staying meant never seeing his sister again, David resolved to escape that night, preparing himself meticulously and deciding to rescue the family as well. He went to the lower part of the ship where they were supposedly held, finding the area empty and starting to free them, but a man with a gun appeared, shooting one family member and aiming at David when Victor arrived from behind, intervening by trying to reason with the shooter. But when the man refused to listen, Victor attacked him, strangling him with a rope and killing him on the spot, then told David to leave with him, and together they carefully boarded a boat. But by then, the ship's remaining men saw them and opened fire on their boat. During the firing, the last remaining member of the family is also killed, and Victor struggles to defend them, but a bullet hits his shoulder. Yet David somehow manages to maneuver the boat out of the danger zone. And shortly afterward, they reach the city outskirts, but Victor's condition is critical, and if the bullet is not removed soon, he could die, which deeply worries David. So he puts Victor in a car and drives toward a hospital, believing there is a helicopter there to escape. But when they arrive, the hospital appears abandoned, leaving David frustrated. And suddenly a zombie appears in front of his car, forcing David to get out and fight, and more zombies start converging from all sides, which he shoots and eliminates before taking Victor inside the hospital, finding it eerily empty. Yet David locates a safe spot to lay Victor down, and Victor warns that the bullet must be removed immediately or he will not survive, and David agrees but realizes he will need supplies. And while searching, he hears human voices from above, realizing that someone alive is hiding inside, and he follows the sound to an air vent, communicating with the people who confirm they are alive and invite him to join them. But suddenly, zombies attack, forcing David to fight his way back to Victor's side, only to find Victor missing. And then he hears a nurse calling nearby, and rushing to her, he finds she is not alone, but accompanied by a doctor and 3 children who have rescued Victor, and they successfully operate to remove the bullet, saving Victor's life. and David thanks the nurse, who asks why he came to such a dangerous place, and he explains that he was searching for a helicopter which he discovered here but found abandoned, and the nurse guides him to the helicopter, which is heavily surrounded by zombies, and as he contemplates how to reach it, his phone suddenly reconnects, revealing multiple messages from his sister confirming she has reached the island safely and only misses him, prompting David to record a message assuring him he is coming soon. But just then, gunfire erupts outside from the same ship crew who have tracked them while searching for food, and realizing if they are seen, they will be killed. David quickly warns everyone that they must escape immediately, reach the helicopter first, and as they move, a zombie attacks, biting the accompanying doctor, who becomes infected, rises and declares she is now infected and no longer has any purpose accompanying them, urging everyone to leave quickly. As they move forward, the group reaches a location close to the helicopter, but the challenge remains how to reach it without being attacked and killed by the approaching horde of zombies. And then David notices some barricades nearby, sparking an idea in his mind, and he instructs everyone to use the barricades to form a protective shield around them so that any zombies attacking would collide with it, and slowly, carefully they advance. But the zombies soon detect them and begin charging in massive numbers, making it extremely difficult to proceed. Yet David fights with all his strength, prioritizing the safety of the children by providing them cover and guiding them first to the helicopter where they get inside. And then Victor closes the cage gate behind them to hold back the zombies while joining them in the helicopter, finally giving the group a chance to escape. But as Victor attempts to start the helicopter, it fails, and the zombies are already breaching the cage, closing in dangerously. Seeing this, David quickly jumps out of the helicopter to confront the approaching attackers, and at the same moment the helicopter starts. But before anyone can take off, several armed men arrive, pointing guns directly at them, and David knows very well that these men would shoot them on sight. So, using quick thinking, he opens the cage gate, allowing the zombies to swarm in and attack the armed men. And taking advantage of the chaos, Victor lifts off in the helicopter, pulling David on board, saving all their lives. And the group is overjoyed, with David feeling immense relief and happiness, knowing he is finally on his way to reunite with his sister. But then, on the way, David receives a call from his sister warning him not to come because zombies have also reached her location, urging him to move elsewhere and find a safe place for himself, acknowledging that even her survival is uncertain. And with this intense, emotional, and suspenseful scene, the story concludes.